My husband asked for a divorce. Then he smiled and said something I'll never forget. I'm taking everything. The house, the accounts, nearly $1 million. Everything, except me and our 6-year-old daughter. I sat there, holding the papers, and for a moment, I almost signed them, because I thought I had already lost. Until my phone rang, a voice I hadn't heard in years said, "Monica, don't sign anything." I froze. Then she said something that made my heart drop. "Your husband called my office last month." Pause. "He didn't tell me it was you, but I remember the numbers." Another pause. "Men don't walk away from $1 million unless they've already hidden more." Let me take you back to the exact moment I lost everything. It was a rainy night, quiet, ordinary. I was standing in my kitchen, cooking dinner, waiting for my husband, just like every other night. But this time, he didn't come home as my husband. He came home as the man who was about to destroy my life. A cold rain slid down the windows, quiet and steady, the kind that makes a home feel safe, until it doesn't. My husband didn't just ask for a divorce. He handed me papers and took $1 million. Then he looked me in the eyes and said something I will never forget. "You can keep your clothes." The house, the savings, the investments, everything else was his. And just like that, I was left with nothing, except my 6-year-old daughter. I sat there staring at my name on the last page. For a moment, I almost signed, because I thought I had already lost. Let me take you back to the moment everything broke. I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile, stirring a pot I had forgotten to turn off. The smell of garlic lingered in the air, warm and familiar, like the life I thought I still had. My name is Monica Hall. I'm 40 years old, a black woman who once had plans, real ones. But somewhere along the way, those plans turned into responsibilities. I wasn't weak. I wasn't passive. I chose to step back from my career in project management after Ava was born, because someone had to hold everything together while Ethan built his version of success. And I believed that our success meant something. Ethan Carter, my husband, was 32, tall, sharp, and controlled in a way that made people trust him instantly. He had a strong jawline, always outlined by a perfectly trimmed beard, and eyes that never gave away more than he wanted. Growing up poor had left a mark on him. He hated instability, hated not being in control, and over time that turned into something colder, calculated. He didn't just want success, he needed to dominate it, and I had helped him do exactly that. We built what people would call a perfect life, a large house in a quiet neighborhood, investment accounts, a rental property bringing in passive income, savings that had grown to nearly $1 million. But there was one thing I had never questioned, something that now felt like the biggest mistake of my life. Almost everything was in his name. I remember asking him about it once years ago. He laughed, brushed it off, kissed my forehead like I was worrying over nothing. "We're married," he said. "It's the same thing." I believed him because I believed in us. From the living room, the soft sound of a cartoon drifted in. Ava Carter, my daughter, 6 years old, small and soft with warm brown skin and a head full of thick curls that refused to stay neat, was curled up on the couch hugging her favorite stuffed rabbit. She had my eyes, deep and observant, but she hadn't learned yet how to hide what she felt. She loved easily, trusted completely. Every night she waited for her father to come home, even when he was late. Tonight, she had fallen asleep waiting. The front door opened. Ethan stepped inside without looking at me, his movements precise, controlled. There was a faint scent of cologne, new, sharp, unfamiliar. Not for me. "You're late," I said quietly. "Work," he replied, already moving past me. I turned off the stove. Something felt wrong. Not new, just undeniable now. "We need to talk," he said. That sentence, simple, final. "About what?" I asked, though my chest had already tightened. He placed a thick envelope on the counter between us. "I want a divorce." No hesitation, no emotion, just truth. My mind stalled. I don't understand. You don't need to, he said, crossing his arms. It's already decided. I stared at the envelope, my fingers trembling as I opened it. The documents were clean, structured, professionally prepared. This wasn't sudden. This was planned. The house, his. The accounts, his. The investments, his. Everything, his. Nearly $1 million. Gone. You're taking all of it? I whispered. Legally, it's mine. We built this together, I said, my voice barely holding. No, he corrected sharply. I built it. You were just there. Just there. Something inside me cracked. And Ava, I forced out, what about your daughter? He shrugged, actually shrugged. She stays with you, that's better. Better. I looked at him, searching for something familiar. There was nothing, just distance, calculation. I've made this easy for you, he continued calmly. You sign, you walk away clean. You get support. Enough. Enough. I stared at the final page, my name waiting. You expect me to leave with nothing? You're not leaving with nothing, he said. Then he delivered the sentence that shattered everything. You can keep your personal belongings, your clothes, your jewelry. That's enough. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Years of my life reduced to that. Mom? I turned. Ava stood in the hallway holding her rabbit, her eyes wide and confused. Why are you crying? I hadn't noticed the tears. I dropped the papers and pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. I'm okay, I whispered. She hugged me back without hesitation. I'll stay with you. Those words, they didn't fix anything, but they changed something. Behind us, Ethan sighed, already heading toward the door. You have a day, he said. Then I expect the papers signed. The door closed, and just like that, everything was gone. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because as I stood there, holding my daughter, my eyes drifted back to the papers. Something felt wrong. Not just the cruelty, not just the numbers, but the way everything had been arranged. Too clean, too controlled, too prepared. A man like Ethan didn't leave things to chance. So why did this feel like a script? My fingers tightened around the page. A slow, unsettling thought crept into my mind, one I couldn't ignore. Why would a man walk away with this much and still look afraid? I stared at the signature line again, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel defeated. I felt something colder, more dangerous. My voice came out in a whisper. What is he hiding? The moment the door closed behind him, I realized something worse than losing everything. I realized he had planned for me to believe I deserved to lose it. For a few seconds, I didn't move. The kitchen light hummed faintly above me, too bright, too sharp, exposing everything. My shaking hands, the papers scattered across the floor, the quiet collapse of a life I thought was stable. The smell of garlic had turned bitter on the stove, like something left too long, something neglected until it couldn't be saved. I stood there, barefoot, staring at nothing, my body still, but my mind racing in jagged, broken thoughts that refused to line up into anything I could understand. My name is Monica Hall. I'm 40 years old. I used to believe I was strong, but that night, in my own kitchen, I felt like someone had just erased me and left my body behind to figure out what to do next. Ava stood in the hallway, her small silhouette framed by soft light. She was 6, too young to understand divorce, but old enough to feel when something wasn't right. Her curls were flattened on one side from sleep, and she clutched her worn stuffed rabbit, Mr. Waffles, tightly against her chest. The rabbit was missing one eye and had a crooked ear, but she loved it fiercely, the same way she loved people, without hesitation, without conditions. "Mom," she whispered again. That was all it took. I dropped to my knees, the papers slipping from my fingers, spreading across the floor like proof that everything I had built meant nothing on paper. My throat tightened so suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. "Why are you crying?" Ava asked, stepping closer, her voice small but steady. I tried to answer. I really did. But the truth was too heavy, too ugly to put into words a child could carry. So instead, I reached for her, pulling her into my arms like she was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. She fit against me perfectly, warm and real, her small heartbeat steady against my chest. "I'm here," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was promising her or begging myself to stay. Ava wrapped her arms around my neck immediately. No hesitation, no fear, just trust. "Mom, I'll stay with you," she said softly. That sentence broke something inside me in a way nothing else had. I had been holding it together, barely, through the shock, through the humiliation, through the cold precision of Ethan's voice as he divided our life like it was nothing more than numbers on a page. But this was different, because she wasn't supposed to be the one comforting me. She wasn't supposed to understand abandonment before she even learned long division. A sob escaped me before I could stop it, deep and raw, bending me forward as I held her tighter. I pressed my face into her curls, breathing in the scent of shampoo and childhood and everything pure that hadn't been ruined yet. Behind my closed eyes, Ethan's voice replayed again. "You can keep your clothes." My clothes. Years of sacrifice reduced to that. I had given up a career that once mattered to me. I had stayed home when Ava was born, not because I couldn't work, but because someone had to hold the structure of our life together while he climbed higher. I had tracked bills, managed schedules, built routines, handled everything invisible that makes a home function. I had trusted him, trusted that ours meant something. But it hadn't. To him, I had just been there. "And Daddy?" Ava's voice was softer now, uncertain. "Is he coming back?" The question hit harder than anything else. I pulled back slightly, looking at her face, searching for the right words. But there were no right words. There was only truth, and truth felt too sharp to hand to someone so small. "Not tonight," I said carefully. She studied me, her brow furrowing just a little. "Did he leave because I did something wrong?" Something inside me snapped. "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. I cupped her face gently, forcing her to look at me. "No, Ava, listen to me. None of this is because of you. Not even a little." She searched my eyes as if trying to decide whether to believe me. Then she nodded slowly. "Then he made a bad choice," she said. I swallowed hard. "Yes, he did." She leaned into me again, resting her head against my shoulder. "Then I'm staying with you." There it was again. Simple, certain, unshakable. And somehow, in the middle of everything falling apart, that one sentence kept me from disappearing completely. I stood slowly, lifting her into my arms. She wrapped her legs around my waist, holding on to me like she wasn't sure I wouldn't vanish too. I carried her down the hallway to her room, the house suddenly feeling too quiet, too empty, like something essential had been removed. Her bedroom was soft and warm, filled with the kind of small details that only exist because someone cared enough to create them. Paper stars taped unevenly to the ceiling, books stacked on a crooked shelf, a blanket she refused to replace even though it was too small now. I laid her down gently, pulling the covers over her. "Will you stay?" she asked, her fingers catching my sleeve. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She relaxed a little at that, her grip loosening just enough for her eyes to close. I sat there longer than necessary, watching her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her chest like it was something I needed to memorize. Because suddenly, everything felt fragile, temporary, like it could all be taken if I looked away for too long. When I finally returned to the kitchen, the papers were still on the floor, waiting. I picked them up slowly and placed them on the table, smoothing them out with hands that were steadier now, but only just. One day. That's what he had given me. One day to decide whether I would accept this version of reality. I stared at the signature line. My name printed neatly, like it belonged to someone who still had control over her life. Maybe this was easier. Maybe fighting would destroy what little I had left. Maybe I didn't have the strength. The thought settled over me slowly, heavy and suffocating. Maybe I had already lost. I reached for the pen. My fingers hovered above the page, and for a moment, I almost signed. I was seconds away from signing my life away when one phone call stopped everything. The pen hovered just above the paper, so close I could almost feel the ink forming my name. My hand trembled, not just from fear, but from exhaustion, the kind that settles deep in your bones after your world collapses in a single night. The kitchen was quiet now. The rain had softened into a faint drizzle, and the house felt hollow in a way I had never experienced before. I stared at the signature line, trying to convince myself that maybe this was the easier path. No court, no conflict, no dragging Ava through something ugly. Maybe survival meant accepting loss. Maybe strength meant knowing when to walk away. That's what he wanted me to believe, that I had already lost. My phone buzzed. I flinched like the sound had cut through something fragile inside me. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then it rang again. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear exactly, something sharper, instinctive. I picked it up. Hello? There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in years but recognized instantly. Monica. Everything inside me froze. Naomi? Naomi Brooks had been my best friend long before life pulled us into different directions. We grew up in the same neighborhood, shared the same bus, the same after-school routines, the same unspoken understanding of what it meant to be overlooked and underestimated. She was taller than me, always had been, with deep mahogany skin that seemed to catch light instead of reflect it, and sharp, defined features that made her impossible to ignore once you really looked at her. Her hair, naturally coiled and thick, was usually worn in a structured afro that framed her face like something intentional, controlled, powerful. Naomi had never been soft in the way people expected women to be. Even as a child, she had a stillness to her, the kind that made people think twice before crossing her. Life had hardened that stillness into something sharper. She was now a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, but the kind people hired when they were done being polite. I heard, she said simply. My grip tightened around the phone. How? That's not important right now. Her voice was calm, steady, the same tone she used when she was about to dismantle something piece by piece. What matters is what you do next. I glanced down at the papers on the table. I think I already know, I said quietly. No, Naomi replied immediately. You don't. Silence stretched between us for a moment. Then she said the words that made my stomach drop. Tell me exactly what he put in front of you. I swallowed, forcing myself to look at the documents again. My voice felt distant, like I was describing someone else's life. He takes the house, the accounts, investments, everything major, I said slowly. I get a small monthly support, and I keep my personal belongings. There was a pause on the other end. Not shock, not confusion, recognition. Of course he did, Naomi murmured. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. What does that mean? Send me pictures, now. I hesitated, not because I didn't trust her, but because something in me was still trying to accept what had already happened, still trying to make peace with losing. Monica, her voice cut through my hesitation. Now. I picked up the papers with shaking hands and took photos, one by one, sending them to her. Each page felt heavier than the last, each clause more final, more suffocating. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I waited, my heart pounding harder with every second of silence. Finally, she spoke. How long did he give you? 1 day. Another pause, longer this time. Then Naomi exhaled slowly. Yeah, she said quietly. That tracks. My stomach dropped. Naomi, what is it? There was no hesitation now, no softening. Monica, she said, her voice turning cold in a way I had only ever heard once before, when she stood up to a teacher who tried to humiliate me in middle school. This isn't a divorce. My breath caught. What? She didn't repeat herself. She sharpened it. This is a setup. The words landed heavier than anything Ethan had said. I looked down at the papers again, my mind suddenly racing in a completely different direction. A setup for what? For you to sign without asking questions, Naomi said. For you to panic. For you to think you don't have options. My pulse thudded in my ears. That doesn't make sense, I whispered. He's already taking everything. Exactly. Her answer came too fast, too certain. And for the first time since Ethan walked out, something inside me shifted. Not fear, not grief. Something else. Suspicion. Naomi continued, her voice precise now, controlled. Men don't move like this unless they've been planning it for a while. Clean paperwork, full control of assets, short deadline. I stared at the numbers on the page. Nearly $1 million, all of it under his name. All he did was protect himself legally, I said. But even as I spoke, the words felt weak. No, Naomi said. He did more than that. Silence. Then slowly, he made sure you wouldn't look deeper. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Something cold slid down my spine. What are you saying? Naomi didn't hesitate. I'm saying there's something missing. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. What kind of missing? I don't know yet, she admitted, but I've seen this before. That got my attention. When someone rushes a divorce like this, when everything looks too clean, it usually means there's something they don't want audited. Audited. The word echoed in my mind. I thought about the accounts, the transfers I never questioned, the way Ethan always handled the complicated parts of our finances, the way he smiled when I stopped asking. My heart started beating faster, not from panic this time, from realization. What do I do? I asked quietly. Naomi's answer came without hesitation. Nothing. I blinked. What? Don't sign. Don't confront him. Don't ask questions. Her tone hardened slightly. Let him think you're overwhelmed. Let him think you're breaking. I swallowed. That part won't be hard. For the first time, I heard the faintest hint of something in her voice. Not humor, not exactly. Confidence. Good, she said. Then he won't see you coming. I looked at the papers again, but they didn't feel the same anymore. They didn't feel final. They felt incomplete. A plan, just not the whole one. Monica, Naomi said more quietly now. Yes? If I'm right, this isn't about what he's taking. My grip tightened. Then what is it about? Her answer came like a blade sliding into place. It's about what he doesn't want you to find. The room went completely still. I slowly lowered myself into the chair, my eyes fixed on the papers. For the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I had never been allowed to see. And one question, sharp and impossible to ignore, rose to the surface of everything else. What is he hiding? My husband didn't just try to take everything. He was already hiding what mattered most. The moment I hung up with Naomi, the silence in the house changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It felt heavy, like something was waiting to be uncovered. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear, from realization. I looked down at the divorce papers again. An hour ago, they felt final. Now they didn't. Now they felt staged, like something designed to make me stop looking deeper. Naomi's voice echoed in my head, telling me this wasn't just a divorce, it was a setup. I pushed the papers aside and walked straight into Ethan's office. The room was too perfect, everything in place. Dark wood desk, leather chair, books lined up neatly like decoration instead of something ever touched. Ethan had always been like that, controlled, calculated, the kind of man who didn't just build success, but built the image of it. I stood still for a moment, breathing slowly. Then I started opening drawers. At first, nothing. Pens, receipts, documents that looked completely normal. Too normal. Then I found it. A stack of bank statements that didn't belong to any account I had ever seen. My heart started pounding immediately. I flipped through them quickly, scanning the numbers. Transfers, large ones, clean, repeated over and over again. Money moving out of accounts I recognized, into one I didn't. I grabbed my phone, took pictures, and sent them to Naomi. She called me back almost instantly. "You found something," she said. "There's another account," I whispered. "I know." That stopped me completely. "What do you mean, you know?" "I didn't know where it was," she said calmly, "but I knew there had to be one." I slowly sat down in Ethan's chair, the leather cold under my hands. "How much?" I asked. She paused for a second, calculating. "At least 200,000 moved in the last year." I felt my stomach drop. "That's not savings," I said. "No," Naomi replied. "That's concealment." The word hit hard. "Why would he do that?" I asked, even though deep down I was already starting to understand. "To make himself look smaller than he is," she said. I looked around the office again, but now everything felt different. This wasn't just his workspace. This was where he built the lie. "He's planning to misrepresent his finances," Naomi continued. "Lower income, lower assets, less to divide." "In court?" I asked quietly. "Yes." "That's illegal." "So is what he's already doing," she said. "That doesn't stop people like him." I swallowed slowly, trying to process everything. "What else should I look for?" I asked. "If he's moving money," she said, "he's putting it somewhere. Assets don't disappear. They relocate." I stood up again and looked around more carefully this time. That's when I saw it. A document, slightly out of place. I pulled it out and unfolded it. My hands froze. An address, a purchase date, 4 months ago. Owner listed under the same company name from the bank statements. "He bought a house," I said slowly. "For who?" Naomi asked. I didn't answer right away, because I already knew. "He didn't just leave me," I said. "He built a new life first." Naomi didn't react. She just let the truth sit there. "Of course he did," she said quietly. I kept reading. Then I saw another document, a car purchase, luxury, recent. "He bought a car too," I said. "For himself?" she asked. "No," I exhaled slowly. "For her." The word felt heavy, real. Naomi didn't need me to explain. Instead, her voice shifted. "Monica, this is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" I asked. "Big enough that this is no longer just a divorce strategy," she said. "This is financial manipulation." My chest tightened. What does that mean? "It means he's preparing to look like he has less than he actually does, possibly even unstable." The pieces snapped together instantly. The low support, the rushed papers, the confidence. "He's trying to look broke," I said. "Yes," Naomi replied, "while hiding assets where you can't reach them." I looked down at the papers again. Now they made sense. He wasn't just taking everything. He was making sure I had no way to fight back. A slow anger started rising inside me. Not explosive, not chaotic, controlled. "So what happens if I sign?" I asked. Naomi didn't hesitate. "You lose everything he showed you and everything he hid from you." Silence filled the room. I looked at the bank statements again. The property, the car, the life he had already built without me. And suddenly, I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt awake. My fingers tightened around the document, because one thought hit me harder than everything else. If this is what I found in less than an hour, what else has he been hiding all along? They didn't come to talk. They came to make sure I stayed small. The knock on the door wasn't loud, but it carried intention. I was standing in the kitchen, the same place I had nearly signed everything away the night before, when the sound cut through the quiet like a warning. For a second, my body reacted before my mind did, heart racing, breath tightening, but this time I didn't freeze. Something inside me had shifted since I found the documents. Fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. I wiped my hands slowly on a towel and walked toward the door, each step steady, deliberate. Through the glass panel, I saw them, Ethan, and her, Vanessa. She was exactly what I expected and somehow worse in person. Tall, slender, with long, straight blonde hair that fell past her shoulders in a way that looked professionally maintained rather than natural. Her skin was smooth, pale, almost glowing under the morning light, and her makeup was flawless, carefully contoured, designed to look effortless, but clearly anything but. She wore a fitted beige dress that hugged her body with calculated elegance, paired with heels too expensive to be practical. Vanessa carried herself like a woman who had spent years being admired and had learned to mistake attention for power. Her eyes moved quickly, assessing everything, measuring value, deciding where she stood in comparison. Ethan stood beside her, composed as always, same posture, same controlled expression. But now that I knew what he had been hiding, I saw something new beneath it. Not confidence, tension. I opened the door halfway, not fully inviting, not welcoming. "What do you want?" I asked. Vanessa smiled first. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind people use when they believe they've already won. "We thought it would be better to talk in person," she said, her voice smooth, almost sweet, but with an edge underneath. Ethan didn't look at me right away. That told me everything I needed to know. "I gave you a day," he said. "I'm still within it," I replied calmly. That caught him off guard, just slightly. Vanessa stepped forward a little, her heels clicking against the floor as she crossed the threshold without being invited. She looked around the house like she was already imagining it as hers. "This place is nice," she said casually. "A bit traditional, but it has potential." I watched her quietly. No reaction, no anger. That seemed to irritate her more than anything else. She turned to me, tilting her head slightly. "You should really consider the offer," she said. "Dragging this out won't help you." Still calm, I folded my arms lightly. "And why do you care?" Her smile sharpened. "Because I don't like seeing women embarrass themselves when the outcome is obvious." There it was, the insult, delivered softly enough to sound polite. Ethan shifted slightly beside her but didn't interrupt. Of course he didn't. Vanessa continued, her tone more direct now. "Let's be honest," she said. "You've had a comfortable life, but that wasn't because of you." I said nothing. She took another step closer. "You cooked, you cleaned, you took care of the house. That's nice. But let's not pretend that's the same as building something." Silence stretched between us. I could feel Ethan watching me now, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to cry, waiting for me to confirm exactly what they both believed, that I was weak. Instead, I smiled, just a little. Not warm, not friendly, controlled. That was the moment everything shifted. Vanessa's expression flickered, confusion, just for a second. "Are you done?" I asked calmly. She blinked. "I'm just trying to help you understand your position." "No," I said quietly. "You're trying to establish yours." That landed. Ethan stepped in then, his voice firmer. "Monica, enough. This doesn't need to turn into something ugly." I looked at him for the first time since they arrived. Really looked. And now that I knew what he had done, I saw it clearly. He wasn't calm. He was calculating. "Then you shouldn't have made it one," I replied. His jaw tightened. Vanessa let out a small laugh, but there was tension in it now. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said. "You've already lost." I tilted my head slightly. "Have I?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping just enough to feel personal. "You're a 40-year-old woman with no assets in your name, no career, and a child to support. You don't have leverage. You don't have options." Every word was designed to hit, and they did, just not the way she expected, because now I knew something she didn't. I took a slow breath, then spoke. "Tell me something, Vanessa," I said. She crossed her arms. "What?" "That apartment you're staying in." She froze, just slightly. It was enough. "Nice place, right?" I continued. "Good location, new interior, paid in full." Ethan's eyes snapped toward me. There it was. Fear. Real fear. Vanessa's expression tightened. "What are you talking about?" I stepped forward now, calm, controlled. "The one bought 4 months ago," I said, "under a company name." Silence. Heavy. Sharp. Vanessa looked at Ethan quickly, just for a second, but it was enough. That one glance told me everything. I smiled again, this time colder. "You might want to ask him," I said softly, "whose money paid for it." Ethan's composure cracked. Not fully, but enough. "Monica—" "No," I cut him off, still calm. "You wanted this to be simple, remember?" Vanessa's voice rose slightly now, no longer smooth. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" I asked. I held her gaze, didn't blink, didn't move. "You called me a woman who cooks and cleans," I said. A pause. Then I finished it, slowly, clearly. "Funny thing is," another step closer, "everything you're enjoying right now," silence, "was paid for by the woman you just insulted." The room went completely still. Ethan looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Vanessa said nothing, because for the first time, she wasn't sure anymore. And that uncertainty, that was power. I stepped back, opening the door wider now. "You should go," I said calmly. Neither of them moved immediately. They were recalculating, trying to understand what had just happened. Good. Let them. Because the version of me they thought they were dealing with didn't exist anymore. And as I watched them walk out, something became clear in a way it never had before. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about control. And I had just taken the first piece back. But one question still burned in the back of my mind. If this was enough to shake him, then how much worse would it get when I uncovered everything? By the time we stepped into the courtroom, my husband wasn't fighting a divorce anymore. He was trying to outrun the truth. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and quiet judgment, the kind of place where voices naturally lowered and lies had nowhere to hide for long. I stood just outside the courtroom doors for a moment, my hand resting lightly against the cool metal handle, steadying myself. I was wearing a simple navy dress, fitted but not flashy, the kind of outfit that didn't demand attention, but held it anyway. My hair was pulled back into a low, controlled style, not because I cared how I looked to Ethan anymore, but because I needed to feel composed, grounded, in control. Across the hall, Ethan stood with his legal team, and for the first time since this began, he didn't look untouchable. His suit was still expensive, tailored perfectly to his tall frame, his beard still neatly trimmed along a sharp jawline, but something underneath had changed. His posture was tighter, his eyes moved more, calculating, yes, but also searching, for weakness, for openings, for a version of me that no longer existed. Beside him sat Vanessa, quieter now, her usual polished confidence slightly dulled. She wore a pale cream dress, elegant as always, but her movements lacked the fluid ease she carried before. Her hands stayed clasped in her lap, fingers tightening occasionally, as if she was holding on to something slipping out of control. She avoided looking at me. That alone told me everything. "Ready?" The voice came from beside me. Naomi Brooks stood calm and sharp as ever, her presence cutting through the tension like something precise and unbreakable. She wore a charcoal suit, tailored to her tall, lean frame, her natural coiled hair shaped neatly around her face, emphasizing the sharp intelligence in her eyes. Naomi didn't just walk into rooms, she assessed them, claimed them, and quietly shifted the balance inside them. Years ago, watching her stand up to injustice had felt impressive. Today, it felt necessary. "I am," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. We walked in together. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but heavier, every seat filled with quiet anticipation. The judge, a woman in her late 50s named Judge Eleanor Whitmore, sat at the front, her posture straight, her gaze sharp behind thin-framed glasses. She had silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, and her expression carried the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced. She was the kind of judge who had seen everything and forgotten nothing. "Let's begin," she said. Ethan's attorney stood first. His name was Robert Hale, a man in his 60s with a calm, practiced demeanor and a voice designed to sound reasonable even when it wasn't. He was tall, slightly stooped, with thinning gray hair and eyes that rarely showed emotion. The kind of lawyer who didn't intimidate you outright, but slowly boxed you in until you didn't realize you had nowhere left to go. "This is a straightforward divorce case," he began smoothly. "My client has already provided a fair division of assets based on documented ownership and financial standing." Naomi didn't move, didn't react. She simply waited, because she knew something they didn't. When it was her turn, she stood slowly, and the entire room shifted. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear, controlled, and precise, "this is not a straightforward divorce." A pause. Then, "This is a case involving intentional concealment of marital assets, fraudulent financial behavior, and manipulation of legal proceedings." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Ethan's jaw tightened. Vanessa's fingers clenched. Robert Hale straightened slightly, his calm demeanor cracking just a fraction. "Objection. These are serious accusations without—" Naomi cut him off smoothly. "Evidence?" she said. A beat. "We have that." She turned, placing a stack of documents on the table in front of the judge. Bank records showing repeated transfers of over $200,000 from joint-related accounts into a separate entity. Another document. Property records indicating the purchase of real estate under that entity within the past 4 months. Another. Vehicle acquisition linked to the same structure. Silence filled the room. Judge Whitmore leaned forward slightly, scanning the documents. "And this entity?" she asked. Naomi didn't hesitate. "A shell company, Your Honor, one that exists solely to redirect and conceal funds." Ethan shifted in his seat. Subtle, but visible. "This is speculation," Robert Hale said quickly. "No," Naomi replied. "This is pattern." Her eyes moved briefly to Ethan. "Repeated, deliberate, documented." Judge Whitmore looked up. "Mr. Hale, does your client dispute the existence of these transactions?" A pause, just long enough to matter. Ethan leaned forward, his voice controlled but tighter than before. "They are legitimate business movements." Naomi smiled slightly, not warmly, precisely. "Then perhaps your client would like to explain why those business movements coincide with a sudden reduction in declared personal assets immediately prior to filing for divorce." The room went still again. Ethan didn't answer immediately, and that was answer enough. But Naomi wasn't finished. "Your Honor," she continued, "we also have reason to believe that Mr. Carter's employer has initiated an internal investigation regarding these financial irregularities." That landed hard. Ethan's head snapped slightly toward her. For the first time, real panic flashed across his face. Judge Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "Is this accurate?" Robert Hale hesitated. Just a second. Then, before he could answer, the courtroom doors opened. All eyes turned. A man stepped inside. Mid-50s, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin and a presence that commanded attention without effort. His hair was cut short, graying at the temples, and his expression was firm, controlled, but not neutral. There was disappointment there. Heavy. Personal. Naomi turned slightly. "Right on time," she said quietly. The man approached the stand. "Daniel Reeves," he introduced himself, Chief Financial Officer of Carter & Wells Consulting, Ethan's company. My breath caught. "This should be interesting," Judge Whitmore said. Mr. Reeves stood tall, his voice steady but weighted. "We recently conducted an internal audit," he began. "What we found raised serious concerns." Silence. Every word mattered now. Funds were being redirected through a third-party entity linked directly to Mr. Carter. He didn't look at Ethan. He didn't need to. "The purpose of these transactions remains under investigation." A pause. Then the line that changed everything. "However, based on current findings, Mr. Carter was terminated from his position 3 weeks ago." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Ethan froze. Vanessa's face drained of color. Robert Hale sat back slowly, his strategy collapsing in real time. I didn't move, didn't react, but inside, everything shifted. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, her voice cutting clean through the noise. "Order." Silence returned instantly. She looked directly at Ethan now, then at the documents, then back at Naomi. And when she spoke again, her words carried finality. "This is not just a divorce." A pause. Then, "This is fraud." The air changed. Everything changed. Ethan wasn't in control anymore, not of the money, not of the narrative, not of me. And as I sat there, watching the life he built on lies begin to collapse in front of everyone, one thought burned clearer than anything else. If this was only the beginning of what they uncovered, how much worse was it about to get? The man who said I deserved nothing was about to lose everything. The courtroom felt different when we returned for the final hearing. Not tense anymore, heavy, like everyone already knew how this would end, and they were just waiting for the truth to be spoken out loud. I sat quietly beside Naomi, my hands folded in my lap, no longer shaking. Weeks ago, I had been the woman who almost signed everything away on a kitchen table. Today, I was someone else entirely. Not louder, not harder, just unbreakable. Across the room, Ethan looked nothing like the man who had stood in my house and calmly told me I could keep my clothes. His suit was still expensive, but it didn't fit the same anymore. Not physically, but in the way it sat on him, like it belonged to a version of him that no longer existed. His posture was tighter, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes darker, restless. The control he had worn so easily before was gone, replaced by something far more visible: pressure. Vanessa was sitting beside him at the start, but even that felt temporary. She wore a fitted black dress this time, simpler than before, less polished, as if she had stopped trying to impress and started trying to disappear. Her makeup was still precise, but there was something strained beneath it, her lips pressed tighter, her eyes avoiding everyone in the room. She wasn't leaning into Ethan anymore. She was angled slightly away from him, her body already creating distance before her actions did. Judge Whitmore entered, her presence commanding immediate silence. She carried the same sharp composure as before, but now there was something else in her expression: finality. "Proceed," she said. Naomi stood, confident, controlled, exact. "Your Honor, since the last hearing, further documentation has been confirmed," she began, "including verification of concealed assets, misrepresented financial statements, and employer action taken against Mr. Carter." Ethan's lawyer didn't even stand this time. Robert Hale remained seated, his shoulders lower than before, his earlier confidence replaced by quiet calculation. He knew. They all knew. Judge Whitmore turned her attention to Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, "your employer has confirmed termination. Is that correct?" Ethan hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Yes," the word barely held together. "And the ongoing investigation into your financial conduct?" she continued. Another pause. "Yes." The courtroom didn't react loudly this time. It didn't need to. The silence said enough. Vanessa shifted beside him. Then slowly, she stood. For a moment, no one spoke. Even Ethan looked at her, surprised. I need some air," she said, her voice tight. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the judge. She didn't even look at Ethan again. She just walked out. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, faster than before, less controlled, more urgent. And just like that, the woman who had stood in my house and called me nothing more than someone who cooked and cleaned was gone. Ethan watched her leave, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked completely alone. Something shifted in the room at that exact moment, not just in him, in everything. Judge Whitmore didn't wait. She turned back to the documents in front of her. "Given the evidence presented," she said, her voice steady, "this court recognizes a clear attempt to conceal marital assets and manipulate financial disclosures." Each word landed with weight. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't interrupt, because there was nothing left to argue. Naomi remained still beside me, her presence calm but powerful. She didn't need to push anymore. The truth was already doing the work for her. Judge Whitmore continued. "The property held under the third-party entity is considered part of the marital estate." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. "The concealed funds will be accounted for in the division of assets." My chest rose slowly with each breath. This was real. This was happening. "And due to the nature of the financial misconduct," she added, her tone sharpening slightly, "this court finds it appropriate to adjust the distribution accordingly." A pause. Then, Mrs. Hall will retain full ownership of the marital residence. The words hit me harder than I expected, not because of the house itself, but because of what it represented: stability, security, a place Ava wouldn't have to leave. I didn't react outwardly, but inside, something released. Judge Whitmore continued. Mrs. Hall will also receive a majority share of all financial assets, including those previously undisclosed. Ethan finally looked at me, really looked, and this time there was no control in his eyes, only realization. And spousal support, the judge said, will be set at a long-term level, reflecting both the duration of the marriage and the financial disparity created by Mr. Carter's actions. Robert Hale closed his folder quietly. There was no fight left, no strategy, no angle, just outcome. Judge Whitmore finished. This court does not reward deception. It corrects it. She paused, then struck the gavel. Final judgment entered. The sound echoed through the room, and just like that, it was over. But not in the way Ethan had planned. He didn't move right away. Neither did I. The courtroom began to empty slowly, people standing, whispering, shifting back into normal life as if something extraordinary hadn't just unfolded in front of them. Naomi turned slightly toward me. "You did exactly what you needed to do," she said. I nodded, but the truth was, this wasn't about what I did. It was about what I didn't do. I didn't sign. I didn't break. I didn't disappear. Across the room, Ethan finally stood. He looked smaller now, not physically, but in presence, like everything that once made him seem untouchable had been stripped away, leaving behind something far more ordinary. He opened his mouth slightly, like he wanted to say something, an apology, an explanation, something, but nothing came out, because there was nothing left that mattered. I turned away first, not out of anger, not out of victory, but because I no longer needed anything from him. As I walked out of the courtroom, the weight I had been carrying for weeks finally shifted. Not gone, but lighter. Behind me, Ethan's world had collapsed. His job, his control, his carefully constructed life, all of it, gone. And for the first time since this began, I understood something clearly. This was never just about losing everything. It was about discovering what he was willing to destroy to keep it. And now that everything had fallen apart, only one question remained in my mind. When a man loses everything he tried to protect, what is he willing to do next? Greed doesn't make people rich. It makes them blind to what really matters. Monica didn't win because she was lucky. She won the moment she chose not to give up. So tell me, if it were you, would you sign or would you fight? Comment your answer below. And if this story hit you, like, subscribe, and follow for more.